Hi, my name is Laura Fales and I'm the Food Service Director for USD 320 Wamego. Along with the Wamego Public Library, we are so excited to be bringing you a special Dr. Seuss Cooks and Books. As many of you know, Dr. Seuss's birthday is this week, and elementary schools across the country celebrate by participating in Read Across America. We're going to celebrate by cooking 2 recipes from the Dr. Seuss Cookbook for Kids Chefs, Cook It. Now this is my personal copy, but the library has one that you can check out as well. Today we're going to be making 2 recipes. One involves the oven and the other doesn't require any cooking at all. So let's get started. The first recipe that we're going to do is called Hooey Honey Parrot Carrots. Before we even can get started though, what do we need to do? That's right, we need to make sure we have clean, dry hands. So if you haven't washed your hands for at least 20 seconds in warm, soapy water, go do that now. All right, now we're back with our clean hands and we can get started. This recipe calls for a pound of carrots, and I'm using whole carrots, but you can also use carrots that have already, these are called crinkle cut carrots, they're fresh. You could use baby carrots, you could use carrot sticks, any kind of carrot will do. If your carrot needs to be peeled, like this one, you can tell that I got my carrots more from a garden. They still have the tassel on top. But to peel a carrot, you use a carrot peeler. Some people call it a potato peeler. We'll just call it a peeler. But you want to make sure when you're peeling that you go in a nice smooth motion away from the hand that's holding the end of the carrot. This keeps our fingers safe from the blade. So you want to make sure that you peel all the way around, rotating the carrot as you go until you have peeled the entire carrot. For the ones that we're using today for this recipe, I trimmed the ends, but I left the little stems on top because I think they look really fun when they come out of the oven that way. You could also cut off that end, and you could take the whole carrot and cut it into pieces if you wanted to do that. Really, it's whatever you prefer and wherever your imagination takes you. So the other ingredients for our recipe are honey, olive oil, cinnamon, and salt. And we're going to make our mixture in a little bowl, and then we're going to drizzle and brush that onto our carrots. So let's make the hooey honey part of our parrot carrots. The first ingredient that we're going to add is 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Now I cook with a lot of olive oil, so I use a diffuser like this. So I'm going to measure out our 2 tablespoons of oil. I like to do the oil first before the honey because now my tablespoon is coated with a little bit of oil, which helps that honey come out a little more easily. Now we're going to do 2 tablespoons of honey. I'm using a local honey, and that's what you have in your bags as well. Using local honey when you're cooking and baking or just to enjoy, they say helps with allergies, and this is a high pollen season right now. So now I'm using a little spatula to make sure I get all of the hooey honey out of my measuring spoon. Okay, now we're going to add our salt, and it calls for 1/2 teaspoon. So I've got my salt. It calls for kosher salt, which is what this is. It's a little more coarsely ground. And then we need to add 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. Oh, that cinnamon smells really yummy. Now we're going to just mix our oil, honey, cinnamon, and salt till it's nicely well blended. I'm using the same little spatula. You could use a spoon, you could use a fork. All right, I think that looks pretty good. Now, I did not mention that before you even get all of this started, you need to have a grown-up help you turn on the oven. This recipe calls for an oven at 375 degrees, and you can see that our oven has already been preheated and is ready to go. So now I'm going to put the carrots onto the baking sheet. You might notice that I have aluminum foil on my baking sheet, and I like to do that especially if I'm using honey that it might get kind of sticky. It just makes cleanup so much easier. So now we're going to drizzle our hooey honey mixture right over the top of all the carrots. And again, now I'm using that spatula to make sure I'm getting every little bit of our mixture on there. And then what I like to do is take a pastry brush and just make sure that I'm really getting those carrots coated. You can roll them around a little bit. If you're using like the little crinkle cut carrots, you might even want to flip them over with a spatula to make sure you're really getting them nice and coated. All right, these look great. So now I'm going to put them into our preheated oven, and we're going to set the timer for 15 minutes, and then we're going to check on them, toss them around a little bit, and we'll restart the timer. So into the oven they go. And then I'm going to set our timer for 15 minutes. And there, now our hooey honey parrot carrots are in the oven. I keep wanting to say ooey gooey. And I'm going to read to you the Dr. Seuss poem about this recipe. Said a tongue-tied green parrot named Hooey, "The stuff on these carrots is gooey." But boy did he love 'em, his beak was full of 'em. Now Hooey can't talk, they're so chewy. So we will check back in on our carrots after we make our second recipe. All right, now we're ready to move on to our second recipe. Our second recipe is called boxed gocks, and it calls for a Granny Smith apple, a nut butter of your choice. I'm using peanut butter. You could also use sun butter or almond butter, cinnamon, craisins, and sugar. Very simple, easy to do, would make a great afternoon snack anytime that you're wanting something a little tart and sweet. So this recipe was inspired by this Dr. Seuss poem that I'm going to read. This is my Gocks, he likes to box. Apple slices in a square, a tasty box he loves to share. You'll be able to share that recipe as well. So to get started, we're going to make our cinnamon sugar mixture. This calls for 2 tablespoons of sugar. And the thing about measuring sugar is that you can just tap on the side to get a level tablespoon. It's nice and easy. The extra just falls off. And then we're going to add 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Now, if you've never tried cinnamon sugar on your toast or your pancakes, you're in for a real treat. So when you have some of this left over, be sure to hang on to it and use it for other things in the kitchen. I'm using a little whisk to make sure that our cinnamon sugar gets really mixed up. Nice, really nice even. I don't want to see too much white or too much of the brown cinnamon. There we go. The next step is to prepare our apple. Now this recipe calls for you to cut it into quarters. You could also, if you wanted, use an apple corer, which cores it and slices it at the same time. But I'm going to show you how to do it with a knife. Remember when you're using knives in the kitchen to keep your fingers and your fingertips well away from the blade and practice good knife skills. So we're going to cut this apple right in half. And then I'm going to put the flat side down on the cutting board and cut that half in half. Same thing with this half. Now we have 4 quarters. Then to take out the core part, you saw what I almost did there because I've been doing this a long time and I was going to cut this way, but the safe way is to stand it up and cut so that the blade is going away from your hand. I'm going to cut the little core that gets rid of the tough spot right in the middle, as well as the stem and the seeds. And there we go. And my personal preference is to go ahead and cut these again so that I have pieces that are much more manageable to snack on. So I'm going to cut our quarters in half. And if you're trying to think about this at home, what does that make this? How many pieces of apple are we going to end up with? If you said 8, you're right. Okay, now we're going to take our apple slices and arrange them like a box, because remember, this is boxed gocks. And if you had 4, it would look like this, but we can make ours a rectangle by doing this. And then there's 2 bonus pieces. Now what we're going to do is take our cinnamon sugar mixture and we're going to just sprinkle a little bit of that right on top of those apple wedges. It's making our plate look really pretty, isn't it? Then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. And we're going to put that in one corner of our box. And like I said, you can use almond butter or sun butter if you have a preference, or if you have a peanut allergy. Peanut butter is a really great source of protein, and that's what makes this a really nice after-school snack too, because it gives you a little boost of energy. And then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of cranberries on the other corner, like so. And there you have your boxed gocks. And to eat this, you just pick up one of your wedges, dip it in a little bit of your peanut butter, and look what happens when you do that. The craisins just automatically want to stick to it, right? And then you just take a bite. Mmm. Delicious. Now, our timer went off just a little bit ago for our carrots. So let's take a peek at those, shall we? Make sure when you're pulling things out of a hot oven that you have your hot pads with you. Look at those carrots. We're going to just mix them around a little bit. Make sure that we turn them. Now I'm using this knife because it was handy, but you could use a little spatula or tongs. But I just rolled them around a little bit. And we're gonna put them back in the oven for about 20 more minutes. And so when that timer goes off, we're gonna pull them out and we'll try our hooey honey parrot carrots. See you in a bit. All right, the timer just went off on our oven. It's time to pull out those carrots. Again, always be very careful when you are working around a hot oven. And when pans come out of the oven, it's always nice to have a hot pad or a trivet to put them on to protect the surface. Oh man, these smell delicious. I'm going to turn off the oven before I forget. That's always a really important step when you're in the kitchen and baking, remembering to turn off the oven. There we go. So now our carrots are ready to be served on a plate. And you see how I'm able to just poke them with a fork? That means that they're done when they're nice and soft. And then look how nicely those cut. And I'm telling you that these smell delicious. I hope that yours smell just as delicious as these do. Let's have a taste. Those are really good. I think that you're really going to enjoy these carrots. It's a great way to add a red orange vegetable into your supper menu, and it's something that you could easily make for your family at home. I really hope you've enjoyed this edition, the Dr. Seuss special edition of Cooks and Books, and we'll see you this summer.